Welcome to Experimental, the science show where women torture men with big pricks. Men lift other men's kilts in search of intellectual satisfaction, and goats get all stiff and fall over. Coming up, conclusive proof from the test department that toast really does land butter side down. And we move the location of the penis back to its rightful place. But first to Dublin, Ireland, where Experimental is asking a pointed question. What don't you like about going to the doctors?
Needles.
The needles.
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 Cold hands.
Hang on, what was that?
Needles.
All right, that's better. Yeah, no one likes being jabbed, especially when it's what the medics call an intramuscular injection, i.e. in the bum. But hey, at least you're getting your medicine, aren't you? Well, not always, according to the research of a woman who's pricked more bums than most, Dr. Victoria Chan of the Adelaide and Meath Hospital in Dublin.
I have personal experience of patients having pain medication or anti-nausea medication injected, and an hour later the nurse would come back to me and say that it didn't work. The patient is still feeling pain, the patient is still feeling sick.
It used to be that bums were a really good place to inject drugs. The problem is that bums are changing. In the West, at least, backsides are getting fatter, which means that needles will have to penetrate further to deliver the drug to the underlying muscle.
Now, this is a 3 centimeter length needle, or 1 1/4 inches, which is the approximate length of the most commonly used needle for intramuscular injections around the world. Now, what the needle is going to do is go through the skin, through the layer of fat, and into the muscle. Depending on how much fat is overlying the muscle will dictate whether this needle is long enough to reach the muscle.
So maybe, and you are not going to enjoy this, the needle is not long enough. To find out, Dr. Chan enlisted 50 patients, each willing to allow her to add a little extra something to their normal bum jab.
Each patient received the medication that was prescribed by their physician along with a small amount of air so that we can see a black air bubble on the CT scan.
But isn't that deadly?
No, not at all. First of all, it's a small amount of air, and also when we are injecting, we pull back on the syringe so that we know we're not in a blood vessel, because it's only if we inject air into a blood vessel that might be a little bit dangerous.
Only very slightly inflated by Dr. Chan's needles, the patients were inserted into a CT scanner, which revealed where the bubble solution ended up.
So what you see on this screen here is the CT scan. You can see here that this is the skin, this is the layer of fat, and this is one of the gluteal muscles of the bum. This black thing here is the air bubble that we had included with each injection to the patient. This air bubble has remained in the fat, so this would be considered a failed intramuscular injection because the medication has not reached the muscle where it's supposed to.
In fact, of her 50 bottoms, she found out that the right amount of bubble solution reached the muscle in only 56% of male behinds and only 8% of female butts, which is a bit of a bummer.
When we look at men and women, women in general have more fat around their bum than men, but a patient does not necessarily need to be obese in order for the injections to fail. The size of the needle is only 3 centimeters or 1 1/4 inches, which isn't that big to begin with.
You know what's coming, don't you?
What we need is longer needles. For example, a 5 centimeter length needle as opposed to a 3 centimeter length needle.
But just how much bigger is a 5 centimeter needle?
That
Is it
looks
necessary?
really intimidating. It's very long.
Oh my God! No, I'd rather that one than that.
That one.
Yeah, that looks worse.
Thicker, it's going back to the Victorian ages, isn't it?
It doesn't need to go in that deep.
Yeah.
No, give me the old one, please. It's a big one.
So the moral of this pointy problem is, if you want your medicine, but you don't want to be pricked by one of Dr. Chan's extra long needles, you better get your bum into shape. In a moment, we're off to Japan to meet a scientist who's got a smaller chopper than James Bond. But before we get too excited, let's retire to the test department for a nice cup of tea and the answer to one of science's greatest questions. It's happened to us all. You're lost in a juicy mag, you reach out for your toast and knock it off the table. Sod's Law says it will always land butter side down. But will it? Enter the Toast Tester 3000 machine. The question: out of 100 pieces of toast, how many will land butter side down? And the answer? A staggering 89%. So toast does appear to land butter side down. But why? Well, here's our theory. A piece of toast falling from a table 76 centimetres high will rotate through approximately 180 degrees, which is why it lands butter side down. So, if we double the height of the table, will it land butter side up? Let's see. Amazingly, when we dropped our toast from twice the standard height, it landed butter side up 81% of the time. So, toast eaters of the world, you have two choices. Double the height of your table, or place the toast on your plate, butter side down. From solving the problems of falling toast, Experimental has headed to Japan in search of a man who thinks he can solve this, the Tokyo rush hour.
You can't go in the direction you want because you're pushed with the flow of people.
Yeah, and people bump into you. It can be painful, especially if it's a girl, because you get hit by a bag.
Someone stepped on my foot with heels once, and that was very painful. I cut my foot.
Even after midnight in this popular part of Tokyo, there's still lots of people and far too many cars. Someone should do something about it.
Well, thankfully, somebody has. Here in Matsumoto, at the edge of the Japanese Alps, a new invention is taking off, and it's set to help you rise above the rat race, literally. It's called the Gen H4, and it's the brainchild of inventor Genai Yanagasawa, better known to his friends as Gen.
It's the smallest one-man helicopter in the world. It took us 15 years to develop. It's very light and very small. You fly it in a small space. Anyone can ride it, and I'd like everybody to be able to use it as casually as you'd ride a bike.
It's so light that you don't need a pilot's license to fly it, and the controls are unlike any other helicopter in the world. They're simple.
You control the height by moving this throttle, and that means you control the height with just one hand. There's one bar, and that controls direction. It's directly attached to the rotors, and if you keep it straight, you hover on the spot. When you want to move backwards, you just push the bar forwards, and if you want to go forwards, you just do the opposite. And that's all there is to controlling it.
Thanks to those pesky laws of physics, when you spin something with a motor, the motor itself tends to spin in the opposite direction. Standard helicopters solve this problem with a second vertically mounted rotor on the tail, which keeps the helicopter body still. Gen's helicopter doesn't have a tail, but it solves the problem in a different way. The two sets of blades spin in opposite direction, so the twisting force of each rotor on the body is cancelled out, giving it perfect balance.
Ever since I was very small, I always wanted to go into the sky. I think it came from reading the tales of the Arabian Nights, and the idea of flying carpets stuck in my mind.
When designing his flying carpet, Gen started with a blank piece of paper and built up the features of his chopper around 4 super light engines. Gen's engines are a miniature engineering wonder. They weigh just 3 kilos, but can produce 10 horsepower each, making them one of the highest power-to-weight ratio motors in the world. The Gen H4 is now available to buy, but it will set you back a cool 3.5 million yen. That's around £19,000. It's a lot of money, but would you be tempted?
If it was a two-seater, yeah?
Yeah, if it was a 2-seater.
Or a 4-seater, so the whole family could ride in it. Oh, but then it would just be an ordinary helicopter, wouldn't it?
About 3 million yen? That's quite affordable. Can I really buy it for about 3 million yen?
That's cheaper than a car, yeah, wicked.
It's great, I want one. I want one too. With this, when there's an earthquake. You're right, you could escape. There's so many earthquakes in Japan.
So, a thumbs up from the Tokyo commuters. But before you get all excited, there is one tiny drawback. The Gen H4 is a bit of a fair weather freak. We've had to film it indoors today because it's a little bit windy. And that's all it takes to throw this little chopper into a tiz.
The weight is still a bit too small against the strong wind. I feel it's probably a little bit weak. For this, we're developing a helicopter with an integrated automatic control system, so it can tolerate a strong wind. And I think it will be better with this in the future. I wanted to create a one-man helicopter that anyone can ride, not only the rich people, but I want everyone to use this as you might ride a bike. My dream is that everybody flies above the cities like dragonflies. I'm working really hard for such a dream.
Hello!
Still to come on Experimental, TV dinner for life, goats that just fall at your feet. But first, we're off to the test department to look where no man should look. The demonstrators are getting excited with the arrival of Hamish McQuasion, a renowned scientist with an interest in the internal pressure of bagpipes. But that's not what the test department are interested in. They want to know if it's true that Hamish has a tattooed thigh, a secret that Hamish does not seem too keen to reveal. Sometime later, when Hamish heads for the showers, our test department demonstrators decide to wreak their revenge. What our two demonstrators want to know is just how fast a Highlander would have to be flung before his kilt would rise and reveal his all. And for that, they're building a Kilt Riser 3000 machine. The theory is that if you spin a Scotsman, centripetal force will cause his kilt to rise.
Oh, that's better.
Let's see. At 10 revolutions a minute, things don't look so good. But at 15 revolutions, there is a definite stirring of the cloth. So what happens when we twiddle the kilt tester's knob all the way? So there you have it. Conclusive proof that a Scotsman will reveal all at precisely 23 revolutions per minute. Meet Charles Darwin, Mr. Survival of the Fittest. The theory being that if you can't avoid being eaten, you're history.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
It must be. Otherwise, it could not explain the continued existence of these little creatures. Tennessee fainting goats, favourite flock of farmer Gene McNutt.
Tennessee myotonic goats pretty much like any other goat, except when they get frightened, they'll fall over into somewhat of a faint, stiffen. A few seconds, they get up and act like just any other goat. They'll carry on and go on.
In fact, the goats don't actually faint. Rather, as soon as they get scared, their muscles stiffen up and they fall over. It doesn't hurt them in any way, and after a few seconds, they get up and trot away as if nothing had happened. However, those few stiff seconds is all it takes for a predator to have an easy meal. So what's causing these goats to drop at the worst possible moment? Meet fainting goat whiz kid, Dr. Al George.
The fainting goats have a condition known as myotonia, which is an inherited abnormality in muscle, which leads to a disturbance in the ability of the muscle to relax. This leads to their characteristic falling behavior in the field.
Oh dear, seems Mr. Darwin's theory is in trouble. Surely the myotonic goat is no more than lion fast food. Lion roars, goat falls down, lion eats. This is not survival of the fittest, Mr. Darwin. It's survival of the unfittest.
Shows how little you know about my theory. Now, sod off, I'm eating.
OK, so we can't disturb the great man. So let's go to the next best thing. Darwin expert Professor Abbott.
Survival of the fittest was a phrase that Darwin was initially uncomfortable with, and he eventually accepted it because of its simplicity. Imagine a population of, say, deer. And some of these deer run slowly and some run faster. And imagine there's a predator chasing these deer. It's a very simple idea that the individuals that run faster from the predator are more likely to survive and thus will fit better in their environment because of that trait of running faster. And if this happens over time, then eventually the population will evolve and become better fit. In other words, will be made up of nothing but fast-running deer.
Which cannot be why these goats are surviving. Let's face it, running away isn't an option for them. So what is their secret? Are they poisonous or something?
If you think about it, if you open up your fridge and you look inside your fridge and you open up your vegetable drawer, what you see is the product of hundreds, if not thousands of years of natural selection by breeders. With the myotonic goats, presumably the farmers that breed myotonic goats find the fainting or myotonia to be a trait that they actually desire in their goats. That's still natural selection, but the agent of selection, the hand of selection, is the farmer himself rather than a predator or a parasite.
I couldn't have put it better myself, lad.
So, far from being a proof that Darwin was wrong, the so-called fainting goat wins out over its rivals for two reasons. Partly because their condition makes for larger muscles and therefore more meat, which farmers like, and partly because they live in a special environmental niche where the predators are kept out by a man-made fence. Say goodbye to the fence, and we'll say goodbye to the myotonic goat. In a moment, we're going to discover where the male member is located. But first, we're off to the test department to find out just how quickly we can poison one of our favourite demonstrators. In the test department, they're throwing a party. And no party is complete without cakes. But Horace fumbles and suddenly, disaster strikes. Clearly, he's heard the old wives' tale that if you pick food up off the ground, within 5 seconds, it's safe to eat. The question is, Horace, is it true? The thought behind this pearl of wisdom is that it takes time for nasties like bacteria and viruses to stick to things. Pick it up quickly, and they won't have had a chance to hitch a ride. So, how can we test this theory on our party cakes? Well, how about using one of these, a UV black light? Pretty nifty, isn't it? Instead of using bacteria, we're going to use this fake gunk. If any of it ends up on our cakes, it will glow bright blue under the UV light. So, let's begin the test. The cake on the right is getting just 3 seconds of contact with the gunk, while the cake on the left gets a full-on 10-second plunge. More than enough for any nasty to stick to it. Now let's give them a flash with the light to see if there are any blue bits showing, and yes, both the 3 and the 10-second cake are now nicely iced with our fake bacteria. And, no doubt, with the real stuff too. So next time you drop some food on the floor, keep it well away from your chompers. Or suffer the consequences. Finally, on experimental, we've travelled to Frankfurt in Germany, a city where the women have some rather odd theories about their menfolk.
Their brain dropped down to their pants. Sorry, but that's how I feel about them, okay?
Oh, okay, fair enough. But is there any truth in this slightly bigoted assessment of the male of the species? Let's meet a man who's interested in finding that out. Dr. Christian Kell, a neuroscientist who's determined to find out not just how much of a man's brain is in his pants, but which bit of his brain is down there. It's all part of a project to map which parts of the brain are used for interpreting the sensation of touch. To achieve it, they used a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, a man and a toothbrush. The machine can see inside your brain as it works. The toothbrush, well, that can stimulate both your toe and other bits you might want to study. For years, we've known the somatosensory cortex, the strip of brain running up from behind the ears to the top on each side, is concerned with touch. And since the 1950s, scientists have assumed that the parts of the cortex that deal with the parts of the body are laid out like this. The head here, the hands here, the legs here, and for some strange reason, that part that should be between the legs, here, underneath the bit that deals with your feet. So what did Dr. Kell and his toothbrush find out? Was the old diagram correct?
There is a huge area devoted to the analysis of the hand, and lateral to it, another big area, which is the representation of the human face. This is due to the fact that in these regions, hand and face, you've got lots of receptors, you've got a high degree of discrimination in these areas. So there's more need of analysis, more need of computation. So the areas in which those body regions are represented are bigger than other body parts.
If our bodies were in proportion to the amount of brain dedicated to them, your average human would look like this. All head and hands.
Hi.
Nice. But what about the penis, which, according to the textbooks, should be beneath the bit of brain dealing with the feet? Let's find out how much brain that takes up.
We stimulated the tip of the penis and the shaft of the penis, as you can see here in green and in blue, and those two activations lie in the same spots. Therefore, the representation of the penis is very small.
But that's not all. According to the past experts, the area of the brain that should be lighting up is a bit beneath the area that deals with the toes. But when Dr. Kell's assistants started stimulating his subjects, they found that the bit that lit up was in fact right here, where it should be, between the bit of the brain that controls the abdomen and the bit dedicated to the legs. In so doing, they rewrote 40 years of medical knowledge.
We put the penis back where it belongs.
Welcome to Experimental, the science show where people freeze in the snow, toads dance, and women drink their pee. Coming up, why this man has a problem with chickens.
If you touch chickens, it increases the poultry pleasure in a scientific way.
And why this man has a problem with women. But first, we're off to Switzerland and the peaceful suburbs of Zurich. Or are they? Sadly not. You see, hidden deep beneath the snow-capped roofs, there lurks the sound of snoring. A sound so bad, it's driving some people to want to kill.
Tim!
But now there is potential relief for the long-suffering citizens of Zurich's snoring zone. No, Tibetan Buddhism has not put down new roots in the Alps. These frozen gnomes of Zurich are undertaking the latest low-tech cure to nighttime rumbles, prescribed by this man, Dr. Milo Puhan, and his team at the local hospital. The playing of the didgeridoo.
Well, with the didgeridoo, we try to exercise the muscles of the upper airways, and thereby the collapsibility of the airways is reduced, so we don't snore anymore, and you have less sleep apneas.
Snoring occurs when the muscles at the back of the throat relax and collapse in on one another, causing them to vibrate as we breathe in and out. In most cases, it simply causes a vibration and that annoying noise. But in some cases, the muscles get stuck together, blocking the airways and effectively stopping the patient breathing. It's called sleep apnea, and at the very least, it leads to the patient constantly waking up. But in the worst cases, it results in high blood pressure and heart disease. But what is it about playing the didgeridoo that's so beneficial? Why not the bagpipes or the trombone? Well, in part, it's the sound of the didgeridoo. It seems that its low frequencies give the throat the perfect massage, as Dr. Puhan's assistant, Dr. Brandley, will demonstrate to those of you who are not squeamish.
With the bronchoscope passing through the nose, I can show you where the snoring happens and the apneas. Further down in the nose, you will see a valve which closes the nose through the mouth, and where by vibration you have the snoring sound, and by complete closure you have the apneas.
And now, a television first. Didgeridoo playing as never seen before, from the inside. And you can immediately see what a workout the low frequency of the didgeridoo gives the throat. In addition to the good vibrations of the didgeridoo is the technique of circular breathing that it requires. To keep the note continuous, players have to breathe in through the nose at the same time as breathing out through the mouth. To achieve this, a skilled player blows normally from the lungs, keeping the cheeks full of air. To take a breath, he closes the glottis, the gap between the vocal cords, and blows the remaining air in his mouth into the didgeridoo while breathing in through his nose. And that strengthens exactly the muscles that collapse during snoring and sleep apnea.
At first I had 17 sleep apneas per hour in the night, and I was snoring. And after 5 to 6 months, I wasn't a snorer. I had no snoring acoustic, and I hadn't apneas.
There is one problem with the treatment, though. There is a danger that for some people, one unacceptable noise is replaced by another. In a moment, we'll be going to caress some chickens with Dr. Chuk in Singapore. But first, it's off to the test department and a man who's interested in caressing women. Our test department demonstrator, Horace, wants to have babies. And for that, he needs one of these. But Horace wants to ensure that his babies are as healthy as possible. And for that, he has raided the Experimentals library. After many hours, his eyes alight on the work of Swiss scientist Klaus Wedekind at the University of Bern. Apparently, he's come across evidence that women's choice of a mate is, in part, influenced by smell. Not the stuff out of a can, but good old-fashioned BO. The theory goes that women unconsciously sniff out men whose immune system is different from theirs, which could help to guarantee healthy babies. It's controversial stuff, but if it's true, it means that BO might be more important in courtship than most people think. Which is why we find Horace beefing up his whiff, prior to a spot of mate attracting. So, let's see if there are any women out there who find Horace's whiff the perfect pong for the creation of healthy offspring. Oh dear. Keep on dreaming, Horace. Later on Experimental, we'll be finding out how Australians feel about cane toads.
I think we've got to kill them.
But first, let's travel to Singapore, where they have a thing about chickens. Look at any menu in any restaurant in Singapore, and you'll find that chicken, in all its unusual varieties, dominates the dishes. From chicken rice to phoenix claws, which are, well, I think you can see what they are. But when they're not eating chickens, the citizens of Singapore seem to have pretty strong feelings about their welfare. At least, that would seem to be the case from research being carried out by Dr. Chuk at Nanyang Technological University.
When I was a little boy, my grandfather had a lot of chickens in the backyard, and I was the only child and an only grandchild, so most of my friends were chickens.
Ah, that's sweet, I think.
And it's shown, you know, by scientific tests that if you touch chickens, they grow faster and they lay more eggs, and so there's a measure of poultry pleasure, and it increases the poultry pleasure in a scientific way.
The chicken Dr. Chuk most likes to give poultry pleasure to is this cocky little chap, Chirp. With Dr. Chuk hard at work in his lab, Chirp spends most of his days alone in his sad green research cage, deprived of the human caress he craves so much. But not for long.
I wanted to develop a new type of system where no matter where you are in the world, whether you're off Earth or on the other side of the globe, you can actually have a communication with your pet through touch. And this is why we developed this system.
What Dr. Chuk is talking about is poultry internet touching, or PIT. You see, TV and radio deal with sound and vision, but no one has managed to transmit touch like this before.
If we touch ourselves, the signal is transmitted to our brain and we feel that feeling of touch sensation. In this case here, we're using the internet as kind of a nerve fibre.
Within our bodies, and chirps as well, lie thousands of nerve fibres and pressure-sensitive cells. So, when we pet our chickens, dogs or cats, their cells are stimulated and an electrical impulse travels up the nerves in their bodies to their brain. And thus they feel the caress of their beloved owner. It's much the same with us. On each of our hands, we have upwards of 17,000 of these cells, so our touch is very sensitive. For Dr. Chook's device, though, it's a bit more rough and ready. On the body of his remote chicken doll, he has placed 5 pressure-sensitive pads that detect when they are touched by him. That information is sent over the net to these vibrating widgets, placed in a handsome chicken suit. When the pads are touched by Dr. Chook, the widgets vibrate in the same place on the chicken's body.
So what we have here is the actual chicken jacket, and inside here we have sensors and also the touch mechanism. So when you put this on the chicken, it will feel the touch remotely. So very simply, you just get your pet chicken and very comfortably you put the jacket, and it's a very lovely and soft material, so it feels very comfortable for the chicken. And that's basically it. Just wears this jacket and it will feel the touch from anywhere in the world.
But hold on, Dr. Chook. Touch is a two-way thing. It's no good simply touching Chirp. We need to get an idea of how the poor bird is feeling.
So what happens is that in the backyard, we are tracking the pet chicken with a camera, and it sends the signal through the internet, and then this moving mechanism moves the doll according to the actual position of the chicken in the backyard. So I can see the pet chicken move represented by the pet doll here.
You can actually feel the chicken?
Yes, I can. I can actually change my touch according to how the chicken is moving, and I can also affect the chicken's movement by my touch.
So how does the chicken feel about this? Dr. Chook worked this out by having Chirp repeatedly choose between 2 coloured doors, behind one of which lay his stylish chicken suit.
What happens is that if it goes into the blue door, it will receive food and water and no poultry internet touching. And if it goes into the red door, it will receive the same food and water, but 10 minutes of the poultry internet jacket touching. Now, over a period of 1 month, we found that over 80% of the time, the chicken preferred the door where it will receive the poultry internet system. So we can actually, using this technique, prove that the chicken preferred to use that poultry internet jacket, and so it actually is feeling some kind of pleasure.
It might only be a few little pads vibrating, but it's enough to give Chirp pleasure. Something that's floating Dr. Chook's boat back in the lab.
It feels very exciting. It feels like I am actually physically interacting with my real pet, even though this pet could be in the other side of the world.
All this human-chicken interaction might seem odd, or indeed somewhat disturbing. But luckily for him, caressing chickens remotely is not the sole purpose of Dr. Chook's research.
This is just the first system. What we're really interested in is the wide area of human-to-pet communication using digital media. So what we see in the future is that people use this for their cats and for their dogs and their pet hamster.
Cats, dogs, hamsters, wives, girlfriends, complete strangers. Still to come on Experimental, how to save the planet with olive oil, and then celebrate with a slug of your own urine. But before the water sports, what about heading to the rainforest of Australia's Northern Territory with the aim of slaughtering a few cane toads? An alien species, these poison hoppers are described as the #1 threat to Australian wildlife. Environmentalists have been trying to wipe them out for years, with little success. But now there's new hope, because they've discovered that cane toads love to disco. It seems they have a fatal obsession with UV lights, as Graham Sawyer of Frogwatch, yes, Frogwatch, explains.
Well, once we found the toads were disco freaks and like hanging around those blue lights, we decided that that gave us a real edge in terms of trying to eradicate them. So we're now on on that pathway of wiping out cane toads using their disco habit.
Cane toads were brought to Australia in 1935 to eat the beetles that were destroying the country's sugarcane fields. The toads didn't fancy the beetles much, but they did love to breed. Today, there are around 100 million of them. They'll eat almost anything they can stuff in their mouths. Australian wildlife just can't compete. In the last 70 years, they've been travelling at up to 1.5 kilometres a night, and their relentless march has taken them right across Australia. Now they threaten Darwin, capital of the Northern Territories. The problem is, very few things in Australia can eat a cane toad. They contain a poison so strong, it can kill crocodiles, snakes, and just about any other predator in minutes. Even the eggs and tadpoles are poisonous. It's basically just man against the toads, but they've proved remarkably difficult to kill. But of course, no self-respecting Australian is going to let a toad get the better of him.
I think we've got to kill them. Simple as that. We've got to stop their advance, and we've got to stop them in their tracks before they start stuffing up our pristine wilderness.
And local Member of Parliament, David Tollner, has a simple solution.
I think there's many ways to deliver a killing blow, certainly with a golf club, lumps of wood, cricket bats will all do the job.
But even with the best handicap in the world, no golfer's ever going to stem the cane toad invasion with a 9-iron.
She's having a bit of fun.
What's needed is the perfect trap, baited with something a cane toad just can't resist.
Basically, we were playing around with different wavelengths of UV, and the shops in town had a number of different types of UV light, so we just decided, OK, give us one of each of those and we'll take them out and try them. And it was just over that wall over there where we set up the trap with the first black light on it, and it caught 109 cane toads in its first week.
But what's so special about UV light? Lynn Schwarzkopf of James Cook University.
It could be that there's something about UV light that attracts toads. There are animals that respond to UV light, not toads that I know of. But there are lots of insects that use UV light for orienting, and so it may be that more insects are attracted to the light, and that attracts more toads.
And now they're adding music to the light show.
Okay, put the cage down.
Schwarzkopf and colleague Ross Alford have been experimenting with the mating call of the male toad. If the toad is attracted by the mating call, then it should move to the source of the sound and ignore the dummy loudspeakers.
As it turns out, both males and females are quite attracted to the sound, probably because the sound of a calling male signals the presence of water, and they're always on the lookout for water.
We were talking about these things as little discos in the bush, but we've got one over behind me which has also got an audio system on it that plays the mating call of the male non-stop all night, so we've got music and disco lights.
It's a place where they like to hang out.
Yeah, we were waiting to see whether we caught all the teenage toads at that place.
I know what you're thinking. What happens to all the trapped cane toads now? Are they shipped off to the local golf club for driving practice? Some find their way into the local souvenir shops, but to be honest, that's a rather limited market. No, it turns out that cane toads might be of use to Australian agriculture after all. After they've been collected from the traps, the toads are bagged up and taken back to Darwin, where they're gassed with carbon dioxide and stored in the freezer before being carted off to the local fertiliser plant. And if any escape, well, at least we know where to find them. In a moment, we're off to the kitchens of the University of Toronto to meet a man who thinks he can power the world with olive oil. But before that, let's knock off to the test department for a gulp of the amber nectar. Meet Tester X. She does have a name, but we're not going to tell you what it is. Why? Because she is about to do something she doesn't want her friends to know about. She's going to drink her own wee-wee. But before we watch her gulp, let's just find out what this wee stuff is. Basically, it's the rubbish the kidneys flush out. Principally salts, a liquid called urea, and finally the stuff which makes it watery, which is, well, water. So back to the main event. Although our tester is strange, she's not so odd. What she's going to do is get rid of the bits of the urine and keep the water. And for that, she's going to use a very basic chemical technique: distillation. What happens is that the nice, clean and sweet-to-the-taste water is boiling off, whilst the nasty, yellow, you don't want to drink them type bits are being left behind. Once the steam condenses at the end of this pipe, there's nothing left other than good old H2O. Nice, and very useful if you've never heard of a tap. Environmentalists are always banging on about energy. How we need to cut down on the amount we use, or else it's all going to run out. Moan, moan, moan. Trouble is, they're probably right. So what if I told you that somebody had invented a way of harnessing freely available energy that was cheap, practically invisible, and completely wireless? Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, here at the University of Toronto, Professor Ted Sargent is doing just that. Inside this bottle are millions of tiny particles called quantum dots that can be painted onto the surface of just about everything. Each dot is a microscopic solar panel capable of converting infrared light from the sun's rays into usable electricity. And the raw material for this nanotechnology miracle is more at home in the kitchen than in the lab. It's olive oil.
Yeah, we basically grow these quantum dots, these little semiconductor particles, in a vat of olive oil.
What's going on is little more than clever cooking. Two chemicals are added to the oil and some fancy heating and bubbling goes on until you end up with quantum dots of semiconductor, each a few billionths of a meter in diameter. And it's that size that makes them tuned to infrared light. In the future, appliances coated with them should be able to power themselves, not only from infrared light streaming through the window, but even more amazingly, because they are tuned to infrared light, the best lit appliances could share surplus energy with those in the shade by producing infrared beams of their own. And this is how it works. The quantum dot solution is sprayed between a sandwich of electrical materials. When infrared energy from the sun or from another appliance hits them, the dots get excited and lose electrons, which travel as an electrical current. This current can then be used to power whatever the sandwich is connected to. Traditional solar cells work a similar way, but they haven't really taken off because they need great big chunks of silicon that are expensive and very difficult to make.
So nanotechnology, through engineering at the atomic and the molecular scale, is giving us control of over these materials so they can harness the sun's power efficiently.
The sun blasts our planet with 10,000 times more energy than we currently consume through power stations. And to match our energy needs, we'd only need to cover 1/1000th of the Earth's surface with Ted's quantum dots. That's roughly the same as the area of the USA that is paved. And with our ever more power-hungry lifestyles, perhaps it won't be long until we see contractors painting office blocks with Ted's techno salad dressing. Mind you, if all the olive oil is going to be used to help power the world, what on earth are we going to put on our salad? Welcome to Experimental, the science show for airheads, garden designers, and people who hate washing up. Coming up, why the colour of your car might make seagulls do this, and why being eaten by worms might cure asthma. But first, let's find out what some men don't want their girlfriends to catch them doing in their bedroom. That's right, playing the air guitar, the instrument that brings out the twit in every ageing adolescent. But travel north to sunny Finland and you'll find something quite remarkable.
This is my favorite move.
The air guitar has left the bedroom and is strutting its stuff quite openly in the street. And even odder, some of these airheads are girls. But stranger still, head into the hallowed lab of the Helsinki University of Technology in Finland, and you'll find a group of graduate students, Juha, Timu and Aki, who are dedicated not only to bringing the air guitar out of the bedroom, but making it into a real instrument, capable of bending the ears of the older generation the world over.
So this is the prototype. So I have my virtual air guitar by my hands. I use the right hand for making plucks, and the left hand is used for making slides. And by the right hand, I also have a little whammy bar effect. So mix all this together with some air guitar attitude and you have your rock music. And you don't have to worry about playing wrong, because the musical intelligence of the system takes care that everything fits nicely together.
It's pretty clever, but doesn't having all those wires connected to your gloves kind of stifle your cool? Welcome now to the wireless air guitar. The idea is that a camera tracks the movement of your hands and then works out their position against a virtual guitar in its memory. The closer your hands are together, the higher the notes.
Instead of using magnetic trackers with wiring, we're using computer vision.
OK, so even the artist at the time of writing known as Prince would not have chosen orange gloves. But there is a good reason for this fashion faux pas.
We chose orange because it's a color not usually found in clothes.
But what's really clever is the computer makes sure that what you're playing actually sounds good. Well, goodish. But how easy is it to play?
Check this.
This player has been on the guitar for exactly 20 seconds, and already the women are flocking to him. Other players who strummed away when the boys exhibited their system at the local science museum didn't have quite the same charisma. But that's one of the great things about their guitar. Even if you can't strut your stuff like Bon Jovi, with a click of a button, you can sort of sound a tiny bit like them.
One of the biggest things was that we added a solo mode where you can use the top 3 strings in the guitar to play solo modes. And the playing mode generally boosts your actions to make the sound more vibrant.
OK, that's enough of the beginners. Let's see the expert air guitarist rip. Ultimately, the 3 boys are going to hit the market with a system that can help you play a repertoire of classic guitar hits. Players will be able to strut their stuff just like guitar karaoke, but the computer will correct all the bum notes. Perhaps in the future, they'll even come up with a microphone that will make you sound like a lead singer. But sadly, this virtual rock star sounded so bad, we had to cut her sound out. In a moment, a shitty story about birds.
Bristol University needs 2 professors of poology now, don't they?
But first, some practical advice to divers. Welcome to the test department's Unlikely Survival Guide, in which we learn how to kill a great white shark. It's easy. You hold onto its tail to stop it swimming forwards. Why does this work? When a shark swims, the water enters its mouth, then passes out again through the gills on either side of the head. It's the gills that suck the oxygen out of the water, allowing the shark to breathe. By stopping the shark swimming forwards, you'll stop the flow of water over the gills and the shark will eventually drown. However, do remember that some scientific facts are more practical than others. Coming up, the latest in water features for your garden, brought to you by the Test Department. But first, we're off to the west of England to look at why birds are responsible for that other weekend task, cleaning the car. It's happened to us all. You've spent all Sunday afternoon cleaning your pride and joy when from out of the blue... Yes, quite. Or avian excreta, as it's more formally known. At first, you're convinced that the bird must have deliberately targeted your car. But they're only stupid birds. They couldn't really do that, could they? Well, Charles West and Liam Chowdhury from the University of Bristol believe that birds may indeed single out particular cars for special attention. It's a radical idea, and like many great theories, it was conceived in a pub.
We were just a few of the mates, having a little discussion, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, I think that the birds, they poo on dark cars, or because they're similar colour to the sea, so dark blue or blue cars."
So immediately the debate started, and we thought if we get enough information, we'd be able to disprove this idea.
Buoyed by this desire, they enlisted 40 university colleagues and in just one day surveyed over 1,700 cars for bird poo. They created a simple table and filled in the number of poos next to the colour of each car. The final result was as surprising as it was conclusive.
We put all the information in, and out came the result.
Yeah, it was worthwhile us doing that, because it wasn't blue cars in the end. It turns out that white cars are the most popular ones.
Astonishingly, the birds in Bristol appeared to have an overwhelming preference for white cars, way and above all the other colours. So had they stumbled across something significant, or were their results a load of... To find out for sure, we need to know if little beady eyes can distinguish a car's colour as well as we can. Here's avian behaviour expert Professor Innes Cuthill from the University of Bristol.
Well, we're certainly proud of our own colour vision, and we can see much better than most other mammals. However, I think a bird would think of us as having pretty poor colour vision. Birds can see hues and wavelengths of light to which we're completely blind.
Human eyes are limited compared to birds because they're only sensitive to 3 colours of light: red, green and blue. On the back wall of the eye, tiny cells called cones fire off electrical signals when they're hit by the colour of light that they're sensitive to. In combination, these 3 cell types enable us to see a whole range of colours. Birds' eyes are sensitive to a 4th colour, ultraviolet. This means that their visible range is wider and they're able to see colours that are impossible for us to even imagine. So birds have fantastic colour vision, but that doesn't really explain why they choose to poo on white cars. Professor Cuthill, for one, thinks that there must be an alternative explanation.
I guess my hunch was that rather than birds being selective as to which coloured cars they pooed on, it was something to do with where people with different coloured cars parked. So if they were more likely to park under a tree where starlings were roosting, or near buildings where seagulls were living.
To see if Professor Cuthill's parking theory holds water, Experimental set up an experiment. We swapped the motors for dustbins, one white and one black, and left them in an aviary full of seabirds from around the world. The question was which bin would prove more attractive to their bottoms. 1 week later, and the results were in. Would our experiment support the Bristol study, or would the doubting professor be proved correct?
And the results? The black bin has 3 poos, whilst the white bin has 7.
I'm frankly quite stunned. So that does suggest there might be something in this.
So assuming birds really do target white cars, the question remains, why? Experimental believes that the seagulls see the white cars as giant rivals who need to be dumped on.
Some birds certainly do use feces as a defensive weapon. Again, mainly seabirds, in conjunction often with vomit, they'll use their feces ballistically.
So while it does seem that, statistically speaking, white cars get a bum deal, the reason is something that science still needs to get to the bottom of.
I think we have stumbled on something here, haven't we? People want to know. People want to know if their cars are being targeted, don't they? Everyone feels a victim of bird poo. I think it's something they want answered.
Yeah, I think Bristol University needs 2 professors of pooology now, don't they?
Still to come on Experimental, the medical benefits of intestinal worms and what every technohead needs for the kitchen. It's spring in the test department, and what better time to tend to the delicate plants and flowers in the test department garden? But what good is a garden without a water feature? Well, maybe a nice sit down will help to think things through. And what could be more refreshing for the brain cells than a cool glass of cola and a couple of chewy mints? Well, perhaps that's not such a great combo, but it does give our demonstrator a corker of an idea. You see, used separately, the cola and mints are a refreshing pick-me-up, but mix them together and things get a lot more interesting. Two things are probably happening. First, the mints reduce the surface tension of the cola, As a result, the bubbles of CO2 find it easier to break through. But that's not all. The CO2 bubbles also use the rough surface of the dissolving mint as a kind of ladder to help them make their escape. So there you go, an instant water feature that you can take anywhere, and it's good to eat too, although I'm not sure what it does to the plants. In our next visit to the test department, we'll be making the world's strongest house of cards. But first we ask how intestinal worms could help England win the World Cup in 2014. Asthma. At the very least, it can wreck a young footballer's dream of scoring 6 against Brazil. But for an estimated 180,000 people a year, it can mean death. But if Professors John Britton and David Pritchard from the University of Nottingham are right, there could be a cure, although not one to everybody's liking. That's right. A gut full of worms could be the cure, not just for asthma, but a wide range of other allergies too. Luckily, they are not the big variety, but parasitic hookworms, which grow to about 1 centimetre long. But why did the team think a worm might be the cure the world's been waiting for?
I think to understand why we're using worms to treat asthma, we have to go back to the immune system in its totality. If I can explain the immune system as simply as I can, it's a compartmentalised system. So you have one compartment that's geared up to fight bacteria and viruses, and another distinct compartment that's geared up to fight worm infections. And if that compartment overreacts, we develop allergic disease, rhinitis, asthma, hay fever.
One of the things that got the team interested in these little worms was when John Britton went to Ethiopia to study asthma.
There's good evidence that around the world, when countries become more affluent, the prevalence of asthma and some other traditional Western diseases increases. We looked at the prevalence of asthma in the urban area of Jimma in Ethiopia and then in rural surrounding villages. And we found there was a great deal more asthma in the town, not as much as you would get in a developed country, but a lot more in the town than in the surrounding areas, just a few miles away.
When he discussed this with Prof. Pritchard, who had been looking at the effect of hookworms on populations in New Guinea, the pair became convinced that hookworms might be having an effect on the immune system. The idea isn't new, it's been around for decades. Their theory is this: the part of the body's immune system that has evolved to fight worm infections is also capable of going on the rampage and causing problems like asthma and hay fever. The good news about hookworms is that they seem to have discovered a way of pacifying the immune system. This allows the worms to live in peace, but might also stop the immune system from causing allergies. But how did they test the effect the worms were having on the immune system? You've guessed it. Luckily, you don't have to eat the worms. Worse, they eat into you. They're microscopic larvae chewing through your skin. Nice. In a blind study, the team infected 10 healthy adults with between 10 and 100 worms. But what was the perfect dose? Too few and nothing might happen, and too many and you could end up feeling very ill indeed.
The person who got 100 is the bravest person, and she felt pretty sick.
In fact, as it turns out, 10 is more than enough.
So far, the team's results suggest that a small infestation of hookworms does have an effect on the immune system. But will it stop allergies like hay fever and asthma?
Here's the infection that we're going to give you.
The first trials are starting up, but will people want their guts full of worms, even if it stops them wheezing?
This could be a major breakthrough. But ultimately, the pharmaceutical industry will want a hookworm mimic, a molecule from the parasite that mimics the effect of the whole infection. So that's the downstream ambition of the project.
Pill or worm, it will come as a welcome relief to anyone whose life is plagued by a tight chest and the dreaded wheeze. Before Experimental heads to the kitchen of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, let's head to our own institution for a spot of R&R. There's a card school going on down at the test department. But being the test department, it's no poker game. The money is on whether it is possible to build a house of cards strong enough to take someone's weight. Here are two ways of building a card house, both borrowed from real engineering. The traditional truss form with its ziggy-zaggy bits and the more modern closed cell system. In the real world, the truss system was much loved by Victorian engineers who could knock out super strong bridges in a couple of weeks, the forces being directed down the diagonal beams. The cell system is often used in skyscrapers where a strong core of cells is built in the middle, which supports the weight of the floors and exterior walls. Going for aesthetics, the test department first tried the truss, but didn't get very far. Next up, the closed cell system was tried. It's a lot easier to build and soon half the table is covered with cards. But can this structure take the weight of a test department demonstrator? Let's see. Fantastic. Rock solid so long as the forces are straight up and down. Subject it to a simulated earthquake with the forces coming from the side, and it collapses. Well, like a house of cards. Finally on Experimental, cooking for nerds. In Cambridge, near Boston, Massachusetts, is the home of Leonardo Bernhard, a man who wants to revolutionise life in the kitchen. Currently, he's developing his ideas in the Media Lab at MIT and is part of a group they call the Counterintelligence Group.
We're in the kitchen of the Media Lab. Kitchens have always been a very technological space and the first place where most technologies enter the home.
It's a pretty cool place, full of things like indoor greenhouses to keep your salads alive for a month, cloths that tell you the heat of the food as you bring it out of the oven.
Careful, it's hot.
And this prototype tap, which tells you if the water is hot or cold. But pride of place is this, thing. Leonardo's dish maker. What gets Leonardo's goat more than anything else is crockery. It's not the washing up he doesn't like, it's the space the stuff takes up. So his idea is a machine that makes the tableware right there in your own kitchen.
The dish maker that you see here is still an early prototype. We've only been working on the concept for 2 years.
2 years? Blimey. They're not exactly big on finish at the Media Lab, but the concept is cool. The idea is this. Dishes take up a lot of space. But if we can make them flat, they take up next to no space at all. So the idea of the machine is that you have a small box in the kitchen filled with hundreds of flat dishes that can then pop out finished crockery like this at the touch of a button. Brilliant. It seems Leonardo has managed to add a big machine to your house, which can produce hundreds of plastic plates that you then have to store. A bit stupid, that. But actually, it's not that dumb. Once you've used the dish, you put it back in the machine, press another button, and it goes flat again.
It will always remember how it used to be, and it will be able to pop back, like a rubber band. When you stretch rubber, it always goes back to the same shape. Here, you have to soften the material with heat to stretch it out. Once you cool it, there's a stress in it, and so when you heat it again, like a rubber band, it pops back to the shape that it used to be.
This phenomenon is called shape memory, found in some plastics. Take Captain Plastic here. So long as he doesn't get too hot, he's as strong as they come. But whack a bit of heat on him, and you can push him into any shape you like. Take the heat away, and he'll stay down, even though he's constantly trying to get back into his original position. To get him back there, all you need to do is to reapply the heat, and he'll do the rest. Ultimately, Leonardo hopes that machines as small as this could supply large institutions with all their crockery needs, freeing up masses of storage space.
I think this prototype shows the basic concept, which is to make dishes and recycle them all within a machine the size of a dishwasher that doesn't consume any more power than your toaster oven.
All very clever, but Leonardo hasn't managed to crack the biggest problem with crockery in the kitchen. Sure, the machine can recycle just fine, but it can't do the washing up. Welcome to Experimental, the science show where men play with robots, robots play with cows, and insects fly aeroplanes. Coming up, we separate this man's head from his shoulders and find out how a high-tech pair of trainers could force this kid off computer games. But first, World Championship Football. Freiburg Football Stadium in Germany. For one night only, robots are attempting to take over the world's favourite game, and we're hunting the man responsible for this atrocity. Professor Bernhard Nebel is an expert in artificial intelligence, and his robot is the first ever developed to take on a human at football and win.
My specialty is AI and robotics, and I'm trying to build robots that can play soccer and then are able to beat the human world champions.
A robot that can beat Brazil? What on earth does Bernhard's creation look like? Well, something like this, actually. And the contest isn't taking place in a stadium. It's in a pub around the corner. Bernhard's robot plays table football and is rather good at it. So good that later tonight it's going to be taking on world champion Thierry Muller. Bernhard is Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at the University of Freiburg. He made his name building robots that play football against robots. And they've won the Robo World Cup 3 times. But Bernhard's dream is that one day his World Cup winning robot team could take on a human team and kill them. But with strikers like this, he's got a long way to go, which is why he's gone back to basics.
Well, you switch to a game that is a bit simpler, and a bit simpler is this game here, which is table soccer, where you have a lot of control, but still there's all this uncertainty you have, and, well, now we built such a system.
Bernhard's creation is a robotic wonder. It features 8 powerful motors that slide and twist the 4 playing rods. An infrared camera updates the position of the ball 50 times a second. And against a random sample of people, it wins 75% of the time. Which makes Bernhard's machine the first in history that can beat humans at a physical game.
That was a 3rd goal against me. Annoying.
It's so popular that a commercial version has now been made. The camera is now underneath, and it even pays for itself. It's great at beating PhD students, but we wanted to know how it would cope against a real challenge. So we set up a showdown against 8-time German and 1-time world champion Thierry Muller. No wonder Bernhard's looking nervous. So a bright start by these two players in this first of 6 goals match. The robot, of course, playing in its usual home colours of blue. Both teams trying not to take any chances here. Oh, great goal from midfield, 1-0 to the robot. But they're off again, nice control from Thierry there. Oh, great reply. Lovely tour, caught the defence napping there. Oh, terrible slip up by the goalie there. He won't want to see that one again. 3-1. And the robot really is in charge. Can Thierry make it back from here? 3-2. And another. Thierry's really turning on the style. 5-3. Just one more needed for victory. And it's there. The human race wins again. And luckily, like any good manager, Bernhard has the excuses ready.
Was not in the best form, it has problems, and 6-3 is actually, I think, a very good result.
But what about our world champion? Conceding 3 goals against a robot, you must be sick as a parrot, Thierry.
A little bit, but I win.
But maybe not for long.
We are working on making the machine much better, and well, one way to do that is to use imitation learning techniques so that we watch what the human does and then learn from it and improve the style of playing.
So, Thierry, however good you think you are, soon the computer will be watching and learning from your every move. But, for the time being at least, humans rule. In a moment, experimental meets the insects, destined to take over in the cockpit. But first, let's go to the test department for a spot of hanging and drowning. The human head, essential feature, or just somewhere to keep your hat? It's clear that our heads are crammed full of useful stuff, but just how much does a human head actually weigh, and how on earth do you work it out? On the face of it, it's a simple task. But when you try it for real, you soon come up against some serious problems. There are, of course, some rather drastic solutions to the problem, but decapitating scientists for entertainment is a bit of a no-no these days, at least on this channel. But fear not, there is a slightly safer way to isolate the head from the body. The test department's Head Separator 3000 system. By dangling our demonstrator upside down, the head hangs freely. Job done. But what about the weight? Well, that's what the bucket's for. That's right, we're going to dunk him. The water that spills over the edge will be directly proportional to the volume of his head. And because a good bit of us is water, that water will weigh pretty much the same as our demonstrator's head. So here are the results. Our demonstrator's head displays 6.5 litres of water, giving a weight of approximately 6.5 kilos. Remember, if you've got a tricky problem to solve, don't lose your head. In a moment, we'll be finding out if one of these can be flown by one of these. And the test department will unveil their new propulsion system for submarines. But first, let's head down to the farm and fondle some udders. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and with military precision, dairy workers in hundreds of farms across Britain are preparing cows for the first milking of the day. But not on this farm. This is Manor Farm in Oxfordshire. Some of the cows are having a lie-in, Others are enjoying their breakfast. And there's not a human in sight. On this farm, it's the cows, not humans, that dictate the milking timetable. And it's all thanks to a robot that allows the cows to be milked whenever they feel like it. Welcome to the first organic dairy farm to be fully robotic. Farmer Neil Rowe is the man in charge. He believes that the key to keeping cows healthy is to make them happy. The entire farm is a shrine to bovine joy, and at the heart of it is a piece of seriously high-tech wizardry.
Basically, we have a robot which interacts with the cows and the cows with it, and we've created what is a voluntary milking system.
Dairy cows can produce on average 30 litres of milk a day, but can only carry 10 litres in their udders, so milking is crucial to keeping them comfortable. When they feel full, they wander over to the milking shed and queue up for the robot. It's designed to be a pleasurable experience to keep the cows coming back. The robot recognises a tag around the cow's neck as it enters and calculates how much milk it will have produced since its last visit. It then mixes up a meal to replace the exact protein and carbohydrate that the cow is about to lose. Rotating brushes sterilise and massage the cow's teats to stimulate the milk flow, and vacuum pumps latch on, guided by a series of invisible lasers. The milk from each quarter of the udder is collected separately, and its exact protein and fat content analysed and logged into a central computer.
The cows are very, very relaxed, and they're much quieter than they would be in a conventional farm where people are telling them what to do.
And it's all to the soothing tones of classical music.
Yeah, normally the cows like to listen to Mozart, and they do seem to like listening to it. And there is some scientific evidence to say that when they're listening to Mozart, the cows transfer the milk from their udder into this jar up to 10% faster.
The robotic system isn't a new idea. It's been around for years, but was originally developed for highly intensive factory farming, where the cows spend their short lives in concrete sheds and are pumped full of drugs to hold off disease. Where Neil is unique is in his approach to the technology. He recognised how the robot's features could be integrated into an organic ethos, where the cows are free to enjoy the finer things in life, and rampant disease is a thing of the past. His cows are happy cows. But don't just take our word for it. Dr. Dirk Zaire is one of the world's top bovine experts. And he's a big fan of Neil's setup. Blimey, I'm glad he's not my doctor.
The uterus is a 3. Milk consistency is about a 3. And the digestibility is a 1. So that is very good. The nice thing about Neil's farm is he does not use drugs. We do alter it here with management, because management is the key how to improve this. And Neil's farm is the proof of the pudding, so to speak. His disease incidence is very low. His culling rate is very low, which is a sign on itself of happy, healthy cows. You see here, eating my hand, eating from my hand. Well, you know, this is a happy animal.
Now that Neil's gone robotic, he only has to visit the farm a couple of times each day for routine maintenance. And this frees him up to spend more time with his family.
There are one or two farmers' wives I know that are not too keen on it because it means their husbands are around a lot more.
So Neil gets to do the school run now. And he's also spent time pioneering a system that selects milk with particular qualities.
We can actually ask the robot to select milk from Pacific cows which are producing the highest quality milk for making ice cream. There's no other way of doing that in a conventional system.
This ice cream manufacturer in Oxford is able to specify the exact protein and fat levels it needs for the perfect scoop. And they're so proud of it, they have Neil's cows on the wall.
This is a win-win situation, that the cows can win by having a better lifestyle. The farmer wins because he has more time and a better return on his investment. The consumer wins because they're getting a better product.
And the final word goes to Daisy, which I think means I couldn't agree more. On Experimental, we like to ask the difficult questions, such as, why is it you can't get a good cup of tea on an aeroplane? Well, let's see what happens when our intrepid aviator Etienne and his trusty kettle take to the skies. At takeoff, the kettle is happy to boil away at exactly 100 degrees centigrade. As he rises through the clouds, something very odd begins to happen. As the air pressure drops with altitude, so does the temperature at which the water boils. By the time Etienne gets to 10,000 feet, the water is boiling at a mere 90 degrees Celsius. And as he climbs through 30,000 feet, it's dropped even further, to around 70 degrees Celsius. But what's Etienne got to do with tea on a jetliner? Well, the pressure inside a jet plane is kept at around 8,000 feet, which means that the boiling temperature of water is down to around 90 centigrade. And as every Englishman will tell you, that's simply not hot enough to get the full flavour out of the tea leaves. Coming up, fireworks for your goldfish, courtesy of the test department. But first, an item to freak out anyone with a fear of flying.
Roger, Red Leader, turn 360, grade 5.
Ever wonder how the brain of a Top Gun works? How it can make thousands of life or death decisions in a few fractions of a second? Well, that was one of the questions running through the mind of Dr. Jack Gray of the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. But he wasn't interested in sticking wires into the brains of the flyboys. He wanted to study a pilot that could knock any Top Gun for 6. Meet the Locust, the ultimate formation flyer.
I'm pretty fond of them. They're very well-adapted creatures. They are much more complex than we have thought, and as we learn more, we discover how much more complex they actually are.
What Dr. Gray wanted to do was to find out how the locust's primitive nervous system allowed it to fly and navigate in massive swarms without constantly colliding into its mates. So how do you study an insect flying? Meet Loco Simulator 1. First, the locust is fixed to a small length of fishing line and then suspended in a specially designed wind tunnel. As soon as the fan begins to turn, the locust feels the wind over its head and does what locusts do best: fly. The locust moves freely, allowing Dr. Gray to film and study its natural behaviour. And to make the locust do more than simply fly forward, Dr. Gray projected images of possible objects onto a screen inside the wind tunnel. What he found confirmed his suspicions, that the locust's brain was extremely responsive.
It has very fast neurons that can detect approaching objects and allowing the locust to make that very fast decision as to where to go.
So what are these neurons he talks about? Watch what happens when a stimulus enters our flyboy's head.
Oh, I say, look at those eyes. What is it?
The stimulus fires up millions of neurons. And whilst he thinks a lot, making a decision seems to take a long time.
Ready to go.
Now, let's see things from the locust point of view. Not many neurons involved, and a fast, simple decision. Dr. Gray's wind tunnel had proved to him that locust brains can react extremely fast to stimulus, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to dig deeper and actually see what their brains were doing. And for that, he needed a new simulator. Now the Locust is mounted on a small pillar, with sensors monitoring its nervous system. Instead of the crude images of LocoSim 1, the Locust is now immersed in a virtual reality world and is free to fly wherever it wants to.
When the Locust is in the flight simulator, we've actually turned it into a joystick. And so when the Locust tries to move, that signal moves the environment in a way the Locust might expect it to.
Although it's a long way off, there are some who think we may be able to use the signals coming from the Locust nervous system to control not just the simulator, like Dr. Gray has, but tiny aircraft that can fly by themselves. However, it's going to take a long time for a human Top Gun to turf the Top Guns out of the cockpit. Still to grace your screens, high-tech trainers designed to get this little lad off the couch. But first, someone told the test department that fireworks burn underwater. Rather than just fluttering her eyelashes and trying to look interested, this test department tester decided she'd find out. Naturally, with fireworks being very dangerous, a firework testing 3000 machine needed to be constructed. OK, so it's a fish tank and a plank of wood, but it'll do the trick. And now for the big moment. Will the firework burn underwater? Light the blue touch paper, stand well back, and dip. It works! Our little friend wasn't telling porky pies after all. But why is it working? Well, water does have oxygen in it. That's why we call it H2O. But that's not what's happening here. When a firework burns, it uses oxygen that's locked up in the chemicals within the firework itself. So not only can it burn underwater, but it would also do the same quite happily on the moon.
That may be so, but remember, this experiment is very dangerous and environmentally extremely irresponsible. Just look at that mess!
People have been banging on about obesity for so long that some adults seem to have actually heard the message and are trying their best to tramp off the pounds. Sadly, for every extra step taken by the big people in the gym, there's another section of the population taking another bite. That's right, kids. And that's got experts like Jane Wardle very worried.
Childhood obesity is a tremendous problem in all Western countries at the moment. Overweight in childhood puts you on a track for becoming an overweight adult with all the health costs that that's associated with. And you may also see health costs in childhood of being overweight. For example, raised blood pressure, raised lipids, even, in extreme cases, you'll see insulin resistance and the development of diabetes in childhood.
But try telling that to a kid just 6 kills short of level 9. The house could fall down and they'd never notice. However, Gillian Swan of Brunel University thinks she's got an invention that could do the trick.
Well, I wanted to tackle obesity by finding an alternative to diet. So I looked at what children like doing, which I found to be watching television, and tried to tie this in so that television was the reward.
Gillian is an expert in embedded technology, the art of sticking technology into everyday objects. And the object she stuck her technology into, shoes. The idea is that a sensor in the shoe detects the amount of steps you've taken each day. And when you get home, the shoe tells your TV or game station how far you've walked. Clock up a decent distance and the TV will switch on for a set amount of time. When the time runs out, the screen goes black, and the only way you can switch things on again is to get off the sofa and start exercising. To get a full hour's worth of electronic frills, a kid would have to clock up 6,000 paces, or almost 5 kilometres. But with kids watching around 2.5 hours of TV a day, they'll need to schlep nearly 12 kilometres to gain their full reward.
Well, I think it's a really neat idea. In our experience of working with very overweight and obese children in treatment, is that children can quite enjoy any little gizmo which will measure their steps and can get quite into trying to increase their number of steps. So if the shoes could do the trick, then that would be good news.
So, if the square-eyed shoes catch on, we might just see kids using their trainers for, well, training. Welcome to Experimental, the science show where soldiers wee on their food, eyes explode, and ducks talk. Coming up, why drinking and mobile phones don't mix in Finland. How Boeing is going to have to rely on paper plane fanatics to design their next airliner. And how this man can open a van with his head from 80 metres. But first, Experimental has come to Natick, Massachusetts to meet a man who thinks that this strange collection of stuff is the greatest food on Earth. He's one of the US Army's top food scientists, and he's kind of proud of what he does, as you're about to see.
Hi, I'm Jerry Dash, the director of the Department of Defense Combat Feeding System. What that fancy title means is that I'm actually the chief cook and bottle washer for the United States Department of Defense. At the moment, we have about 1.2 million warfighters who consume and use the products we have. They all carry weapons, so it's in our best interest not to antagonize them. In today's battlefield, we have really three combat ration platforms. One is the individual combat ration platform. I'm sure a lot of you folks are familiar with the Meal Ready to Eat, or MRE. Not too long ago, that stood for Meals Rejected by Everybody. We have now taken that MRE to Meals Relished by Everyone. What you see here is a ration that we entitled Unitized Group Ration Express. Basically, it's a kitchen in a carton. It requires no fuel, no cook, and no equipment. All you do is pull a tab. There's an exothermic reaction that generates a lot of heat, and you have a piping hot meal for 18 soldiers anywhere in the battlefield, no matter how remote they are. We also have a special purpose ration, which we currently field for our reconnaissance pilots, very high altitude missions, and these particular products are used through the mask feeding through a pressurized helmet.
Apart from being high-tech and possibly low cuisine, there is one thing that all these foods have in common. They're all heavy, and most of their weight comes from this stuff: water. In fact, the water content of a standard issue 3-meal ration weighs about the same as an M16 rifle. Which is why Jerry and his friends have come up with this, Ration X. Freeze-dried food which you can rehydrate with this. Yes, nasty, dirty, brackish water. The kind more deadly than enemy fire. Unfortunately, this grunt wimped out when it came to the eating bit, but Jerry has faith in his science, so let's see him try.
And we would take some water that does not look particularly appealing, and we would fill the pouch up to about here. That's basically what the product would look like. And what I'd like to do is open this up and dump it in this bowl. Okay, we're gonna put this down. And as we say in the Department of Defense here in the Combat Feeding Program in Natick, the proof is in the pudding. Delicious. Heaven.
Okay, he didn't drop dead, but why? It's all to do with a membrane that separates the food from the dirty water. It's full of holes less than 2 nanometers wide, much smaller than the smallest bacteria and viruses, but larger than a water molecule, which means water can get through, but the nasties cannot. That's all very well when the grunts are fighting near water. But what if they're out in the desert? Yep, you've guessed it. If you get really, really desperate, you can occasionally use your own personal source of water to rehydrate your meal. But we don't suggest you make a habit of it. Still to come on Experimental, funny walks in Finland, the ultimate paper plane in Nottingham, and why chewing gum blocks up the toilets. But first to the test department for some heady science. Our test department team are always thinking of new and exciting ways to make life easier for themselves, or ideally, effort-free. And Horace here was struck the other day by a crucial and important laziness issue. How can you lock your car when you're too far away to use the bleeper thing? You can't imagine what he tried rather than walking the 50 feet back to the car. But eventually he came up with putting the bleepy thing against his head. What? It can't be true. Well, let's see. At 45 feet away, we can see the efficiency of the bleepy thing has dropped right off. We call this the no bleep zone. But using his bleep through the head system, we can push the boundaries of the no bleep zone right back to an amazing 25 meters. Why? Well, it seems to have to do with radio waves. The bleeper sends out a stream of them, and Horace thinks that if he can increase the size of the aerial, he can increase the bleeper's range. His theory is that putting the transmitter onto his head results in an aerial exactly 1 Horace bigger. He's also tried to improve his radio reception by sticking its aerial in his mouth. He swears this works, but we remain suspicious of his theories. Later on Experimental, the test department will be firing eyeballs. But first, let's head north to sunny Finland. Welcome to Finland and the northern town of
Oulu.
Thank you. In the summer, this place is a beach resort, but in winter it gets so cold, the sea freezes. You'd have to be mad to be outside on a day like this. But when we heard that somebody here had invented a device that was set to eradicate mobile phone theft forever, and that they were using vodka in their research, well, we were here in a shot. Strictly in the name of science, of course. Professor Heikki Elisto is an expert in identification, but his latest invention doesn't use traditional biometrics like fingerprints or iris scans. Instead, it measures gait, the way that we walk.
Theft of mobile phones is a big problem. For example, in UK, 5% of all thefts are mobile phone related.
And that's what Heikki is trying to combat by using a new kind of biometrics, measuring the way people walk. The idea is a simple one. Your phone sits in your pocket or bag as normal, but it constantly monitors your movements as you go about your everyday life. It learns how you move. So if someone steals your phone, the phone will know it's not you and will lock up.
We grabbed the idea and we started working on a very small-scale test or experiment to see if it really works.
Heikki's latest prototype makes use of a tiny motion sensor. Once fitted inside a mobile phone body, it measures movement in 3 directions. Side to side, that's the yellow line. Up and down, the red line. And forward and back, the green line. And it actually works, as Heidi here will demonstrate. The invention is designed to make a detailed record of every stride, bob and sway of the hips as we make our way around the world. This profile of Heidi's walking style is as individual to her as her voice.
Imagine that I'm a robber. I have stolen Heidi's phone. I have it here. And now I'm going to walk with this phone.
As soon as he starts walking, the phone detects that Heiki's gait is different from Heidi's, and within a few paces, it switches off. The reason that everyone's walk is so individual is down to the large number of factors that shape our movements. For a start, the size and shape of our skeletons, what sex we are, the size and makeup of our muscles, and even psychology comes into play. It seems that happy people really do walk with a spring in their step. Heiki's invention is still at the prototype stage, although it's being extensively tested and the results are looking promising. They have found that under extreme conditions, like walking on ice, the phone does tend to think you're a robber, a bit of a drawback, especially if you live here. So the phone now features a PIN code that you can input to unlock the phone and reassure it that it really is you. Something else that completely confuses the phone is alcohol. It seems that after a few drinks, we don't just forget ourselves, we forget how to walk like ourselves too. And when you're especially tired and emotional, you might even forget the PIN code. Quite a severe design fault, you must admit.
Currently, the system knows only one walking style per person, but you could teach the system to learn your walking style when you are, when you have had a couple of drinks.
This is just the beginning for Heiki and his team. What started out as an unusual idea has grown into something that they really believe will cut crime.
Yeah, we are very excited about this. It's not only mobile phones we have been talking, but it could be laptops, any gadget you are carrying with you.
So, can anything portable be protected by this system? Perhaps not. Still to come on Experimental, we have Dr. Quack and her microphone, and Professor Macintosh and his paper planes. But before all that, a cautionary tale from the test department. We've all heard the old wives' tale. If you sneeze with your eyes open, they'll pop out. But is there any truth in it? In the test department, our demonstrator is trying to make himself sneeze using pollen and pepper. Sneezing can also be caused by a bright light and even orgasms, but we're not going to go there. Which brings us back to that main question. What would happen if you didn't close your eyes when you sneezed? Time for a little experiment. Unfortunately, we can't do the obvious thing and pin his eyes open. Health and safety, apparently. So we'll do the next best thing. We'll use a fake head and ping-pong balls for the eyes. The idea is simple. Push the ping-pong balls into the pipes, which will act as eye sockets. Then use a foot pump to recreate the pressures that build up inside your nose and throat when you sneeze. So let's see what happens. One problem though. Very luckily, there are no tubes connecting the back of your eye sockets to your nose and throat. So no matter how hard you sneeze, your eyeballs can never do this. In a moment, we head to Nottingham to learn how to design an airliner. But before we do, some reassuring advice for anyone actually thinking of flying in one. Welcome to the world's worst flying nightmare. You're at 9,000 meters, and suddenly some nutter decides to open the door. Within a second, you're sucked out into oblivion. Could this really happen? The answer is no. Let's go back to the ground, and our nutter is waiting by the closed door. The pressure inside and outside the plane is roughly the same. But as the plane rises, the pressure outside drops. At 9,000 metres, the higher pressure inside the cabin seals the door into the fuselage, wedging it with a force equivalent to 5,000 kilograms. Which means there's no way any nutter could ever pull it open. Happy flying. Now it's time for some aeronautical engineering. Don't tell this lot they're making paper planes. To them, this is advanced, applied, paper-formed aeronautics. What you're looking at are the aeronautical engineers of the future, a group of students who've just entered a paper plane making competition. Well, we all have to start somewhere. They learnt their crimping skills at the University of Leeds under the watchful eye of Andrew McIntosh, Professor of Thermodynamics and Combustion Theory. That's burning stuff to you lot.
What they did was make their paper aeroplanes with some of the aeronautical principles which there are in aeroplane making. This little paper aeroplane is actually flying by exactly the same principles as your big jumbo jets crossing the Atlantic.
But will advanced engineering knowledge, when applied to the humble paper plane, get you something better than your average classroom dart? Visually, it seems we're onto a winner here. You get models like the Spruce Moose, the Hornet, and the Mighty Avenger, winner of the competition's prize for the best design. And there's also this one, which looks a bit like the sort of thing I made in class. But why do planes or paper darts fly in the first place? First up, there's the wings. On fancy planes, they're called aerofoils, but you may have noticed that paper planes usually have flat wings.
Oh.
They fly in a much simpler manner. The angle of the flat wing deflects the air downwards. This means that the wing and anything attached to it, like a plane for instance, is pushed upwards. Action and reaction, simple but effective. Want to know what it feels like? Stick your hand out of a car window like this. But real planes, and some of the more complex designs flown in the competition, seem to have all sorts of things dangling off their wings.
Ailerons and other devices on aeroplanes are very simple things really to understand.
Most wings have flaps, which increase the lift when the aircraft is at low speed. There are other devices called ailerons, which help turn the airplane. And on some aircraft, there are additional winglets at the tips, which improve the overall efficiency of the wing.
This picture shows hooded cranes in flight, and they've got little winglets which reduce drag at the side. These actually are great designs, which of course the great designer has already put there in nature, and we can do well to actually copy those designs.
But does it all work? Just because it's got a complex design, does it mean it'll fly better? Let's see how the Avenger, with its flaps and winglets, does. A staggering 2.09 seconds. Next, it's the Hornet. Going for maximum climb and recording a gravity-defying 3.5 seconds. Finally, the Spruce Moose. Nothing fancy here, just a common classroom dart and... Whoa, an amazing 5.3 seconds, which is only 22 seconds off the world record, but proof that when it comes to making paper planes, a simple design wins out every time.
Unless somebody really knows what they're doing with these flaps and ailerons, they're going to very quickly move into regions where, rather than being a help, the flaps and the ailerons and all the other things, the winglets, are probably going to reduce the amount of forward speed. And it's the forward speed that is vital to keep the plane going for as long as possible. So for competitions like the one we had, It's hardly surprising that it was the simple ones which actually were the ones which were more successful.
I came up with this design based on something which I got taught in my secondary school quite a few years back. And it was the best design that we've found so far. We tried a lot, but disrupt.
Well, there you have it. A functional, simple design, well built, can still beat a complex design. Before we talk to some ducks in Italian, let's go to the test department for a spot of mastication. This scientist is performing a very important experiment here in our test lab. She's trying to find out the truth behind the old wives' tale that chewing gum takes 7 years to be digested. But luckily, she won't be doing the digestion herself. She's going to create her own stomach right here in the lab. So what's in there that does our digesting for us? Well, first up, there are enzymes like pepsin. Then there's hydrochloric acid, which just helps things along. So let's see what these two chemicals do to a little sponge cake. In 3 hours, it's all gone to mush. And now for the main event, chewing gum. Sounds promising. After 3 hours, when the fairy cake was mush, not a lot seems to have happened. And what about in 24 hours? Well, still not a lot. And this is hardly surprising, because the main ingredients of modern gums are likely to be wonderfully indigestible substances, such as polyethylene and polyvinyl acetate. And let's face it, we weren't designed to digest plastics. So what does happen to the gum? Well, 24 hours after being swallowed, it's usually gone on a little trip. Finally, on experimental, meet Dr. Victoria de Reicher, a linguist from Middlesex University in London. Her interest in language is rivalled only by an obsession with ducks. It's a combination that's sure to ruffle a few feathers. You see, Victoria has a theory that ducks have regional accents just like us.
Humans have made an assumption that ducks quack in the same way all over the world. And I wanted to challenge that.
Victoria, or Dr. Quack to her friends, started by asking children across the globe to impersonate the sound of a duck. She found that an English child would say
quack, quack.
A Vietnamese child
Cab, cab.
and an Italian child
Quack, quack.
Most linguists put this down to language differences, but Dr. Quack thought that maybe the ducks themselves had quaccents. On her trusty scooter, Dr. Quack hunted down 2 geographically distinct duck populations for her study, the first of which was in the heart of London.
I picked ducks in East London because I'm a Londoner myself, and I feel that it's a really interesting accent. It's one you can very easily recognise, and I wanted to see whether or not that might be paralleled in the animal world.
Dr. Quack's streetwise city ducks were here, at Mudchute City Farm in the East End of London. Ducks aren't keen on staying still at the best of times, and sure enough, as soon as Dr. Quack brings out her microphone, it causes as much panic in the farmyard as a jar of hoisin sauce and a Chinese cookbook. With the city ducks recording, Dr. Quack headed out of London to the rural village of Shatterling in Kent. But would the laid-back country ducks prove as unwilling to participate as their city counterparts? Ah, such a peaceful life. When the feathers settled, Victoria took time to analyse her recordings, and the results were surprising.
So this is the rural duck. And this one is the urban quacking. The London ducks are incredibly raucous. They're very loud, they're very fast. They need to make each other heard, I think, or they need to be heard.
Amongst each other, and also over the everyday sounds of the city, like planes, trains, traffic, and the hordes of people visiting the city farm.
The rural ducks are much slower. They're very relaxed. They use a lot of lower register sounds so that it doesn't seem half so competitive. I think perhaps that's also due to the fact that the sound around them operates very differently.
So it seems that Victoria's quackscent theory might be right. The differences in the way humans imitate ducks could well be down to the ducks themselves. Of course, regardless of accents, will we ever really know what ducks are saying to each other?